Starting now.
Yes, starting now.
This is Rick.
And this is Steve.
And we're here on talksbacktothepreacher.com.
Yes.
And today's welcome. Yeah.
Yes.
We have some beautiful religious kitsch here for you. Pharaoh, Moses, and Simon Peter, and a little boat. And I don't know where the little Jesus is. He got stolen.
You can imagine he's right here.
He's
here.
Jesus is among us. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. That's beautiful. I love it. There's an interesting conversation going on right now. It's April of 2011, and there's an interesting conversation going on right now about of course, it's not a new conversation. It goes all the way back forever. About whether God punishes the wicked and sends them to eternal damnation, and what the nature of that would be like.
Okay.
And whether that's even what actually happens or not, or if that's a metaphor, or if that's an invention of the church over centuries of time. Rob Bell, who's kind of a hipster Christian author, pastor, has a book coming out in which he says something that I've thought a lot about over the years, which is I don't see what use it would be for there to be a hell that God sends everybody to at all. And so that has created quite a stir.
So what is the origin of hell as the modern church understands it? Is there scriptural?
Yeah, I mean there is. The dilemma with the whole idea of there being a hell is that the word is a translation of, this says noon, to remind me to be here at noon because we're recording today.
Oh, okay. So
that's what that is about. The idea that there is a Sheol, S-H-E-O-L in English, which is an Old Testament Jewish scripture concept of the place that is unseen, like the unseen place. Okay. And the idea, there's no systematic theology about this in the Jewish scriptures or the Christian scriptures, but the idea that there is an other place that things that are unseen go to, like the souls of the dead.
An afterlife, maybe in the general sense, or is this saying
maybe
more
an afterlife, or like there are passages where it says that God's going to come and destroy this wicked nation, and they're going to end up in Sheol, like not that they're going to go to hell,
separate and away and unseen.
Yeah, it's that.
Right.
It's the mysterious, the unseen.
Right.
So then Jesus comes along and he picks up on this tradition that had come into the conversation in the Jewish world and the Greek and Roman world, which is that, now the Greeks, of course, and the Romans believe that there is a god named Hades, who's the brother of Zeus and Poseidon in Greek mythology. They have other names in Roman mythology. And the god of the underworld, Hades, is the ruler of this very rich, with resources, jewels, gold, all that kind of stuff that comes from the earth, and also rich in terms of mystery because it's the unseen.
Sure.
It's the underworld, and that's where the souls of the dead go. Okay. Now it's not described necessarily in the myths as fiery.
Or a place of suffering, or anything quite like that.
No, it's just where they go.
So where does that come from? Is that
just old?
It's just stories that have been floating around and
forever.
So, pardon me, modern Christian mythology, modern being the last few hundred years, really seems to have kind of glommed onto that and turned it into its own.
Yeah, and what happened was that they picked up on a thread in Jesus' teaching, which is where he talks about being separate from God in one way or the other, to be not so. He talks about the day of the Lord, which comes in which, and it's a Jewish scripture concept, in which God comes and rewards the good, the righteous, and punishes the wicked or the unrighteous. And he says it would be like going to Gehenna.
I've heard that term, yeah.
Gehenna is the burning trash heap outside Jerusalem.
So it wouldn't be fun.
No.
Definitely.
It'd be bad.
Yeah.
And the deal with Gehenna was it was this valley, trench area where the wicked kings had made fire offerings and burnt offerings to other gods than Jehovah. And so it became kind of a cursed place.
Right, right.
And so that was like no man's land. And
Yeah.
so during Jesus' time, that was the trash dump.
Right.
And they're burning it all the time so that the impurities and the germs and all that stuff don't get into the drinking water and don't get
Sure.
up into the air.
Sure.
So they're always burning it. And so Jesus sort of uses that as a metaphor for what it's like to be separate from God.
Okay.
Like, it would be like being thrown into the burning trash heap outside town. That term, Gehenna, then gets translated over time into our scriptures as hell, which is like an Old English, Old German word, which doesn't necessarily mean what we think it means. This is all kind of an extrapolation out of the idea that there's also this mention of the lake of burning fire, which has been prepared as a punishment for the devil and all of his angels. And then in Revelation, which is this apocalyptic literature, there's all this discussion about the pit and the fire that the wicked get cast into. And
Right.
da, 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 da. Over time, this was not thought of metaphorically. It was thought of literally.
Yeah.
Right. There is a place where the wicked go, and they're punished for eternity.
Well, and I can see, especially back in the times when, there was no lighting at night save candles, and you lived in relatively isolated communities, and anything that was outside of that community was very scary.
Right.
And, things happened that you couldn't explain, and it was very difficult that you would take these things very literally, because things were, nature was a scary place at times.
Yeah.
And I can also see where in a modern interpretation, people would maybe not have that same kind of fear, and so they start to cast off some of that, and I can see where the people who want to hold on to a more literal or fundamental interpretation would see that as heresy. Well, you can't just cast it away because you don't feel scared anymore.
Right.
I want to continue to hold on to this. So this is the debate that's raging right now. So, or has been for a long time, but it seems to be coming into popular conversation as well.
Yeah, and I think, absolutely. I think that part of what happened is in the post-Enlightenment world, we need to be able to measure things either scientifically or philosophically with reason. There were a lot of things about Scripture, and like you said, the sort of literal interpretation of Scripture that were sort of cut and spliced together to form doctrinal beliefs that weren't just the church says it is so and therefore it is so, but we can sort of trace it.
Sure.
If you put this together, this together, this together, then these go together, and that supports this as an argument or as a proposition. And so that's where the idea that if somebody doesn't accept the mainstream agreement about what that doctrine is, whether it's baptism or heaven or hell or you name it, right? What's salvation? What's the atonement of the cross, etc. Then if somebody says, I don't know if that really makes sense to me, or I read that more metaphorically.
Right.
Then you get into the whole issue of biblical interpretation, and then you get into the whole issue of heresy, right?
Right.
You don't believe in what is traditionally accepted.
Right.
Then there's a larger philosophical, theological question, which is how would that even be helpful? Like, what does it produce? Well, it produces fear. Like the carrot and the stick, right? Here's heaven, that's the carrot, and here's hell, and that's the stick. And you're supposed to follow along. The donkey follows the carrot, and if the donkey gets out of line, you whack it with the stick.
If you treat people like that, though, that's the most they will ever.
But it's efficient.
It does work. It does.
No, seriously,
I'm with
it's
you.
totally efficient. Yeah. It works. I'm not saying that it's a bad system because it's efficient. I'm suggesting that there are a lot of people who, myself included, have said, I don't know, given the nature of things like Jesus saying that God is love, that God is loving parent. I don't know how it is of any benefit to the idea that God's grace is sufficient for all of the evils in the world. We just can't see how. That a dualistic system that says... And then there's the whole question of, Well, who gets in? Is it based on what you do,
Yeah, exactly.
or some systems say it's if you're baptized, and some systems say if you've accepted Jesus or prayed the sinner's prayer, or
Right.
I mean, it's ridiculously complicated.
So why don't you go to talksmacktothepreacher.com and tell us what you think it takes to get into heaven,
Yeah,
and we'll talk about it.
sure. And if you don't know, great.
That's a good answer too.
And if you are asking that same kind of question, why is this even relevant? Then let's just talk about it.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
All right. See ya.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.